Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Dr. Sharon Scambary, and I'm here today to talk about marketing. Specifically, we're working from the Hunt et al. Text published by McGraw-Hill, and today we are focused on Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Chapter 2 is all about strategic planning, and Chapter 3 is about the global environment. So let's share the screen here and we shall get going. Okay. So, marketing strategy is all of these things and more, but the essence of the story is that one strategy directs the decision-making on all of these marketing elements and tactics. So in this chapter, we discuss the importance of strategic planning for marketing. We analyze the characteristics of an effective mission statement. We outline the 5 main components of the marketing plan, and we look at tools and techniques that help us conduct a situation analysis and identify segmentation and what our marketing mix should be. And we end the chapter with looking at strategy to reach international consumers. And that's a nice segue to take us into Chapter 3 about the global environment. But for now, let's talk about the importance of strategic planning. So strategic planning is a key success factor. It's shaped by an organization's mission, and it comprises, an organization's strategic plan comprises these 4 elements: the marketing plan, the human resources plan, the risk management plan, and the financial plan. Okay, so we're going to focus in on the marketing plan. With regards to a mission statement, a mission statement is a statement of shared purpose, strategic direction, and opportunity that the organization is focused on. We've got an example here with Patagonia. Patagonia simply states their mission is to be in business to save the planet. Very succinct, very direct. And Patagonia is a brand founded on environmental justice from the very beginning, from the foundation days. And okay, so here we've got the 5 key components of a marketing plan, right? So let's just back up a step, right? So an organization's strategic plan has these elements: a marketing plan, a human resource plan, a risk management plan, and a financial plan. Maybe other plans too, like an operationals plan. But we're focused on the marketing plan. And this slide is giving us the key components of the marketing plan. So at the front end, we've got the executive summary. So this is the 1-page whole and complete standalone summary of what the rest of the marketing plan says. In the situation analysis, what we're doing is presenting, this is what's going on in the market, this is what's going on in the industry, this is what's going on in the organization. And we use various tools to conduct that situation analysis. With regards to marketing strategy, this is where we identify which target market is the focus, how are we going to position in the marketplace, and what marketing mix elements are we going to bring to bear to achieve our marketing objectives. The financials is about projections, sales sales projections and expense forecasts, so that we recognize how much money do we actually, how much sales and money do we actually have to make to break even. Now at the back end, ideally, you want to have an evaluation and control component to your marketing plan. And this is where you, the astute marketer, is deliberately tracking your efforts, your marketing communications, your analysis, to make sure that you and your brand and your product and your organization is on track to achieve the marketing goals that you have stated in the marketing plan. If not, you need to adjust, right? So that's the control mechanism. Okay, in terms of the situational analysis, we are giving a market summary. And we give a market summary at 3 different levels. At the macro level, and we might use a PEST analysis for that. We'll be talking about that. At the industry level, where we give a competitive analysis, and at the organizational level, where we might use a SWOT analysis. So the market summary is enabling us to give a perspective on marketplace trends. And marketplace trends that we see specifically in the current market is definite job market trends such as remote work and digital transformation all round. Okay, so in order to understand the market and the market dynamics, we can use a tool known as the BCG matrix. And this BCG matrix analyzes the market in terms of growth and market share, right? So when we are in a situation where we have low market growth but relatively high market share, we've got something that's recognized as a cash cow. And the Apple iPod is put forward as an example there. So when we're talking about high market growth teamed with also high market share, we're talking about the stars of the market. And an example put forward is the Apple iPad. Now, when the market growth again is low, but teamed with low market share, then we've got a dog. And we see this with the CDs that have been superseded, for example. And the 4th top right quadrant, where we've got a high market growth, but a relatively low market share, relative to competitors, that is, we've got a question mark. And so some of the new iPhone apps are question marks. So by understanding where your brand is on this BCG matrix and understanding where competitor brands are relative to this BCG matrix, we can begin to understand where we fit in the marketplace and where the market opportunities are. So going from the industry level, the competitor analysis, into the organizational level and the SWOT analysis, we need to look at internal strengths and weaknesses, as well as external threats and opportunities. So here we've got a McDonald's ad with the headline, "Good afternoon breakfast." And like, what's that about? Okay, so let's do a quick SWOT for McDonald's and see what we'll revisit that ad. Okay, so the strengths of McDonald's, we've got a strong brand recognition, we've got long-term profitability and a good reputation with regards to breakfast menu. But the weaknesses are that good staff, good employees are hard to keep. I mean, that might have something to do with the pay scale, but anyway, that's another story. They have a traditional menu of high fat, high salt, high sugar items. And yes, they do well at breakfast, but that means longer waiting times for the consumers. In terms of opportunities and threats, this is a global brand. They have achieved international market expansion. They have indeed expanded their menu items, possibly with more healthy options. And that's because there is an increasing health consciousness amongst multiple consumer groups. So now if we go back to our ad, Good Afternoon Breakfast, what they are doing is demonstrating that their breakfast items are actually relevant all day, specifically in the afternoon. So they are trying to reposition their very popular breakfast menu for the afternoon. So that's a menu development, otherwise known as a product development strategy. Okay, so Now, when we're looking at the situation analysis, when we are conducting a situation analysis and we're at the level of the competition, the level of the industry, we need to be very wary of who we are considering with regards to the industry and the competition, right? So when you have a narrow industry definition, such as the burger industry, for example, McDonald's is competing against Burger King and Wendy's. Fair enough, but you know that doesn't actually serve McDonald's as well as you might assume. So we the analysts, by broadening the industry definition from burger industry to you know, quick service convenience foods, then we are looking at also indirect competition such as Subway, Chipotle, and Panera. And this is very useful to McDonald's because consumers are making a choice. You know, where are they going to spend their money? And if they have this higher level of health consciousness, then maybe McDonald's is not on the menu. And so McDonald's has to figure out, well, how do they counter that? Okay, so with regards to strategy, what we are talking about is direction. You know, like, where is this brand going? What are the specific objectives that this strategy is designed to achieve? Okay, so the basic strategies that I always start with is seed, growth, or milk, right? And when you're formulating marketing objectives, you basically want to say to do what by when. And a shortcut way to understand what I'm suggesting there is recognizing that your marketing objectives need to be stated very specifically so that they are measurable and we can see that they are achievable and realistic and they have a timeline. So let's say that again, to do what by when. And you might have 3 to 5 marketing objectives for each marketing plan for each brand. And those 3 to 5 marketing objectives encapsulate what the overarching strategy is, what the overarching marketing strategy is. All right. Other basic tools and techniques that we have to enact our marketing strategy is segmentation, targeting, and positioning. All right. So what's segmentation? Segmentation is taking the entire mass market and segmenting that mass market into groups that have similar needs and wants, consumer segments that have similar needs and wants, right? So we're going to segment the market. We might segment the market based on demographics, geographics, psychographics, or maybe cultural factors. Now, once we segment the market, then we can identify which segments are we actually going to target. McDonald's has multiple targets. They communicate with the adult market in a very different way to their communications with the teenage market, and similarly the families with small children. That's another target market for McDonald's, but they deliberately tailor the products that they offer and the way that they communicate with these specific targets in a strategic manner. Positioning is an extremely important tool and technique in marketing. And what is positioning? Positioning is all about where does your product sit in the consumer's mind. Now, what Ford did when they launched their Ford Fusion, they deliberately positioned the Ford Fusion as a stylish, youthful hybrid car. And this specific positioning for the Ford Fusion enabled them to effectively compete against the older traditional Toyota Camry, which had released a hybrid model. Okay, this slide is showing us Ansoff's growth matrix. And what we are looking at here in the first instance, look at the outside of this graphic. On the vertical strategy, on the vertical axis, we're talking about market strategy, whether we are targeting existing markets or whether we are targeting markets that we haven't targeted before, new markets. On the horizontal axis, we are talking about product strategy, whether we are focused on our existing products or whether we are developing new products, right? So when we, the brand, we, the organization, when we are focused on existing markets and existing products, in other words, taking the products that we have in our stable on our menu at the moment, and when we are using those existing products to target existing markets, we're talking about a market penetration strategy. When we take our existing products and we target new markets, markets that we haven't targeted before, then we are talking about a market development strategy. And when we take, for example, when we take our existing products into foreign markets, that's exactly what we are doing. That's a market development strategy. Okay, let's shift from existing products to new products. When we develop a new product and we launch this new product targeting our existing customers, our existing markets, then we're talking about a product development strategy. When we develop new products and are targeting new markets, different markets than what we currently target, then we're talking about a diversification strategy. So again, we can analyze our strategic operations, and we can analyze our strategic intentions. Similarly, we can do the same for competitors. Okay, so let's look at some examples here. An example of a market penetration strategy, which is when we have existing products into existing markets. An example is Pizza Hut trying to get their existing consumers to buy one more pizza each month. This is a market penetration strategy. But when Dr. Pepper develops a 10-calorie soft drink, they're developing a new product, but they are still targeting their existing markets, their current customers. I mentioned that a strategy where an organization takes what they have to offer and goes into foreign markets, an international market expansion strategy. This is a market development. And diversification, when we've got a new product and we're targeting new markets. An example is Disney owning channels like ABC and ESPN that are outside of their traditional domain. Okay, now let's talk about the marketing mix. We can talk about the 4 Ps, but as you know, I have an issue with that. The 4 Ps are dead. The 4 Ps arrived in 1963 and we've moved on, right? So we can talk about the 4 Ps as a basic framework, but then let's take that a step further. So starting with product. Product is about the good or the service, as well as any sort of service augmentation strategy you've got on there related to that product. As well as product, we need to talk about brand strategy. And brand strategy is one avenue we can use with regards to differentiating in the marketplace. Now, promotion is definitely all about the marketing communications that we put out there to communicate the value of the product that has been designed and developed and available to the marketplace. But talking about promotion is kind of overly simplistic. Let's look at integrated marketing communications and digital marketing and make sure all of that messaging is consistent and on track with the product and brand strategy. So talking about digital marketing, here we've got Frank Camerata, who is the founder and CEO of this footwear brand. And what he is suggesting is that their social media campaigns are focused on consumer education about what differentiates the brand, namely fashion, comfort, quality, and value. And so that is their digital marketing strategy. All of their social media is, of course, using visual content to achieve this consumer education campaign and therefore increase engagement. Coming back to the 4 Ps now, we're talking about P for place, but rather than being overly simplistic, let's talk about distribution and logistics. And basically, this is all about when and where the firm delivers that value to the customers. And let's not forget about sales and pricing. So essentially what we want to be doing is designing and delivering the right price to the right customer at the right time, at the right price, and getting it right the first time. Okay, so McDonald's made the strategic decision in 2015 to shift towards choosing cage-free eggs, and that created a distribution challenge because their demand for eggs was kind of high. So it took them a while to actually catch up to that strategic intention and achieve that goal. It took them about 10 years. All right, so now let's look at international expansion. So with the digital age that we live in and the internet technology that we have at hand, large retailers such as Walmart have been able to achieve international expansion. But just like large retailers can go international in today's contemporary market, so too can small business owners, right? So the internet enables that global exposure. You know, direct ownership and investment is not the only way to enact an international market expansion. Another way is franchising. And Burger King, in their international franchise system, recognizes that other foreign markets have a very different culture to the American market, and therefore product modification is required. So this hits on this hits on the question of you know, it's more efficient to take a standardized product internationally, but that negates the cultural considerations and the cultural differences that there are around the world. It's expensive to modify. However, if your intention is to meet the needs of the market, then modification is indeed necessary, as does Burger King in Japan. Okay, let's switch gears and go to chapter 3, the global environment. 5 learning objectives here. We're going to differentiate between direct and indirect competition, like we did in the previous chapter. We're going to summarize the major external factors that influence the marketing environment. So that's the macro environment. We're going to extend the analysis of the marketing environment beyond the US domain. And we're going to identify the major trade agreements in the international marketing environment. And then we'll end with describing how marketing is just as relevant to not-for-profit organizations. Okay, so the competitive environment that marketers need to be very aware of and understand with regards to the competitive environment, whether we're talking about the domestic market or the international market. Again, we have to consider who are our competitors. Well, my suggestion to do that is to go one step back and think about what industry are you operating in. And so SiriusXM might see Pandora as direct competition, but it's also very useful to consider Apple iPhone as indirect competition and a substitute for the SiriusXM radio product. And in this way, SiriusXM understands or gets the opportunity to position in the marketplace as a viable option, as opposed to the Apple iPhone, if they so choose. They don't have to, but it's kind of astute to understand who you're competing against. So consider both a broad and a narrow industry definition to comprehensively identify who are you competing against. All right, now, environmental scanning is just as important in the domestic market as what it is in the international market. This process of environmental scanning looks at various macro markets, and some of you might know the PEST or the PESTEL framework. So PEST is the framework to help you to understand that P is for political macro environment, E is for economic macro environment, S is for sociocultural and demographic macro environment, and T for technological. So the PEST framework or the PESTEL framework, which also includes the legal macro environmental macro environment. This is a tool that can help us to understand what are the market dynamics, and therefore enables an organization, a brand, to effectively navigate this environment, as does every other business. The thing is, some macro environmental factors are more relevant to a particular business than others. And so by conducting a macro environmental analysis, what you're effectively doing is identifying the relevant macro factors for your brand or for your business. Okay, so here is that macro environmental analysis in graphic form. So we're looking at the political, economic, sociocultural and technological macro environments to understand what do we need to have our eye on to make sure that we are anticipating the shifting market dynamics. So when we're looking at economic factors, we might look at things like the gross domestic product of a nation. We might look at unemployment trends. We might look at consumer confidence trends. And we can see that two brands that are quite distinct and very different from each other, the Dollar General brand and the Louis Vuitton brand. Now, what they have in common is that they both use income distribution as a way to position their product, right? So the Dollar General brand is deliberately targeting the low income consumer segment with off-brand and budget-oriented products, whereas Louis Vuitton is targeting the more affluent consumer segment with a premium product, a designer label. Here we can see that consumer spending is tracking with consumer confidence. So when consumer confidence is peaking, then consumer spending is going up. Demographic trends include, for example, age. So we as analysts, as astute marketers, can understand that the aging population trend is global, and Japan is actually leading the way there. Gender is a factor with regards to purchasing, and education levels affect unemployment. We could also say that unemployment levels affect the uptake of education. And another very important demographic trend that we can recognize in the US especially is the fast-growing minorities in the population. So here we can see the bottom blue band is the white non-Hispanic consumer segment, and from 2010 projected through to 2050, that is dropping. What we also see here is the next band, which is that light blue band, from 2010 through to currently, it's about 19%, and forecast to be more than 30% by the time we get to 2050. The African American community is kind of stable at between 13 and 15%. Sociocultural factors in the macro environment. We've got an increasingly globalized world. Well, we did have until COVID came along and shut down global supply chains and international travel, international tourism, for example. Instead, now we are dealing with isolation, quarantine, lockdowns, border closures. Okay, so we've talked about various macro environmental factors. Let's touch on political macro factors. And what we can recognize is that there is a changing political climate around the world. We have a political division between left and right. That's not only in the US, it's happening globally. And we've also got this disinformation epidemic going on in the political sphere. And social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter are being asked to step up to the task, but each of these platforms are taking a different approach. Twitter is actually asking their users to flag COVID-19 and election misinformation. Now, how well that works or not, time will tell, but that's what Twitter is doing at the moment. So the last, we've talked about P for politics, E for economics, S for sociocultural. Now let's talk about T for technology in terms of the macro environmental analysis. And specifically, I've focused on healthcare industry here. And what we see in terms of macro trends, macro technological trends relevant to the healthcare industry is that we've got this digital transformation going on. 78% of healthcare organizations have shifted to cloud computing, and another 20% plan on investing in the cloud. Okay, that's a big step forward for the healthcare industry. There has been some resistance to that. And another technological trend that's going on in the healthcare industry is about consumerism and the recognition that consumers have an increasingly important role in managing and proactively managing their own healthcare through, for example, digital apps, especially for conditions such as diabetes, right? So consumers are taking back control through technology in managing their own health. Now, part of the resistance in the healthcare industry in shifting towards digital technology has been because, you know, HIPAA is a law in the US that is focused on protecting patient privacy. And the question in cloud technology and other digital technologies is, you know, how safe is patient health records when it's in this digital format. Now, apart from specific industry regulation, there are more general laws that marketers must be aware of. And here I've Huntertel is giving you some examples, such as the Fair Packaging and Labelling Act came about in 1966. And so you have to be aware that the label is required to identify the product and name the business and identify the location of the manufacturer, the packaging, and the distribution of the contents. Now, when we shift to the international context, we can see that a trend in the last 50, 60 years has been the formation of trading blocks, free trading blocks, regional blocks that are collaborating to encourage trade and investment. So we can make reference to the North American Free Trade Agreement, which in 2020 was revised as the USMCA. And this is about the United States, Mexico, and Canada facilitating trade across their borders. Another very important international trading bloc is, of course, the European Union, which Britain decided to exit in officially in the last, what was that, in the last 12 months. Okay. And what we as astute marketers definitely need to understand is that marketing is relevant not only to traditional products and brands, but also non-traditional products and brands, such as non-profit community services. So non-profits might source some funding from grant money, whether that's from private philanthropists or government funding. They might source funding from hosting special events or individual donations. One of the important points to understand with regards to non-profit organizations in the US is that giving has continuously increased over the years, or relatively so. We had a drop in 2008 when the financial crisis hit, and this data only goes to 2019, so I'm not sure where that curve goes in the COVID context, but we'll update that as the data comes to hand. So here we've got social media activity by big brothers and big sisters, and demonstrating engagement with stakeholders, not just their customers, but stakeholders, right? So engagement is key, stakeholder orientation is key, not just for traditional products and services, but also non-traditional, non-profit organizations and brands. So there you go. There's chapters 2 and 3 in a nutshell. Thank you very much for joining me today. And I hope that recording discussion was useful, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.